Wow. I didn't even have to do much. Thank you. Hello, we're going to get started. My name is Elanta Slowek, and we'll just get straight into it. I'd consider myself somewhere in the gray area between marketer and designer, and also a hardcore cannabis enthusiast. Growing up in a Polish household while also being brown early made me realize that this society and we in it tend to tribalize ourselves. And my upbringing also gave me perspective and fascinated me in demographics and culture. Ultimately, these things, the things of my upbringing, made me interested in how those things affect buying habits and visual communication. That interesting process led me to finishing my master's degree in business design and innovation and being awarded a Fulbright fellowship to Poland. Thank you. Now, I'm on a mission to destigmatize the plant and the culture via media. And when I started my cannabis journey about a year and a half ago, I was immediately directed to IWC, where I ran into a very robust, active, and welcoming community. IWC provided me an unmatched network and connections, not to mention a really great mentor from their pilot mentorship program. Several months after the fact, IWC connected me with Chicago NORML, shout out to Chicago NORML, where I became the media manager since, and I've learned so much from very inspirational Black women leaders, and most importantly, I have learned the challenges of advocacy and equity in this space, in addition to understanding the bigger picture of legal cannabis in Illinois. Everything I've learned so far has come full circle, which is crazy. I'm very grateful to have these types of opportunities, and hopefully these things keep opening themselves up to me. But if I'd have to give some advice for anybody over 30 in this room, it'd be to check up and tell your younger peers that they are valued and to have faith in them. I promise, yes. I promise you will plant a mustard seed, and we already be stressing over our like 17 different side gigs and impending World War III, so that'd be nice. Anyways, in conclusion, within this cannabis journey of mine, I have got to meet so many amazing individuals already. I know a lot of these lovely ladies on the stage, amongst others, friendly faces in the room. And without further ado, I will introduce Gina Gault.
Gotta pull this way down. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Make sure you follow Elanta on Instagram. I think it's executive.e. Yes. Sounds good. So I am fortunate to work in the cannabis industry in marketing, and we face all kinds of random challenges, just like in every other part of this industry. So we're going to get into a conversation about some of our backgrounds and how they support what we're doing now, and we'll maybe take a couple of questions at some point as well. If you ladies would be so kind as introduce yourselves, I'd really appreciate it. Laurie?
Hi, everybody. I'm Laurie Parfitt. I am with LKP Impact Consulting. I have been in the industry since 2019. Prior to that, I did about 16 years in CPG. My firm really focuses on being a fractional CMO, so that's how I operate within the space. I work with brands and operators on a fractional basis to provide them with the marketing strategy and guidelines that they need to fully execute within the industry and be successful. Thank you for having me here today, Gina.
Jeni?
My name is Jeni Cohen. I'm one of the founders of Flame Princess Confections. I come from the food and beverage industry, and I also come from a background in CPG prior to that, so consumer product goods, and an extensive sales and marketing background as well. So I own an edibles brand. We also do catering, fine dining, so anything that you're looking to infuse with cannabis. My partner Rebecca and I are happy to do it and come up with some fun and creative menus for whatever it is that you're looking for. And we are working towards getting possibly an infusion license to build some edible brands in the Illinois marketplace.
And if you enjoyed what you had for lunch, yes. Thank you, Jeni. Laura.
Laura Hand. My name is Laura Hand, and I'm the founder and CEO of Laura Lou Experience Design. And so I also provide fractional marketing services to businesses, and I often see that as women, and myself personally, we try to do all the things very well, and when we try to do that, it often slows us down on the path of where we're going. And so by aligning and finding those that are really good at what they do, and it allows you to, as a brand or a company, to get to your goal faster. And I'm rooted in customer experience design, and so from the UX perspective, customer experience perspective, it's all about being unapologetically user-focused and knowing their needs and challenges, and so that you can be the hero to provide those and constantly be evolving along the way. And so that's what I do.
Vanessa.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Valdovinos. I am the co-founder of Hush Chicago. We are a woman and minority-owned full-service marketing and event production company for the cannabis industry. What we do, we specialize guest experience for BIPOC brands to be able to not only connect with other professionals in the industry, but also be able to reach and connect with their target audience through a way of marketing and event production, and really focusing on preserving the culture of cannabis.
Thank you. Shanice.
And then, of course, they saved me for last. So I'm Shanice Fullov. I am the assistant brand manager for Dog Walkers. It is a premium pre-roll line at Green Thumb Industry. Prior to that, I've been in the cannabis industry since 2019, starting in dispensaries, working my way up to the top. Before that, I spent about 7 years in the healthcare industry, so I have a lot of healthcare administration background and research and program development.
So, Laurie and Shanice, I'd love to hear, Laurie, we'll start with you. What really led you to pivot into cannabis marketing?
So I got really lucky. I was sitting in a CPG role for about 5 years. I was bored out of my mind. I was kind of at the end of my lifespan for food and beverage. And my mentor from a prior company called me up one day and said, I just became the president of a cannabis company. And I need a marketer. You want to come join me? And being someone who is very, I consider myself to be a pretty high risk person. I have no issue just going out there and trying things. I pivoted into the industry. I became the vice president of customer engagement and marketing for Mission Dispensaries, which is part of Forefront. And I found an industry and a passion that I never thought I would have before. And being able to be out and help people live better lives and be part of something that is bigger than myself was truly impactful for me. And being able to develop branding and marketing off of that, and really focusing on, marketers in CPG really focus on the mind. They're always, thinking about what the next best thing is, how they can position things properly. In this industry, it's all from the heart. You really have to lead from the heart. And so not even realizing I had that in me was just a huge realization. And being able to kind of lead with love and be out there, creating brands and creating products and helping people understand what the cannabis industry can do for them really had a transformative impact on me and my career. And so being in an industry like this that's so nascent that, we're developing what that marketing looks like, and what we can do in CPG is not the same thing that we can do in cannabis, and being able to be much more creative and resourceful has been, a tremendous experience for me as both a marketing professional and as a person.
I love that. Love it. Shanice.
So a little bit about my start. As I said before, I started in the healthcare industry, so about 7 years in research, product development, a lot of community work. I was 24 years old with my master's in public administration, so from the beginning, I've just been taught to go for what you want and really just do your best to elevate in that course. Unfortunately for me, I had to pivot a little bit because, again, going back to me being 24 years old with a master's degree. That's unheard of for a lot of people, especially women of color. And I just felt like, thank you. And I just felt like my talents weren't necessarily being utilized to their fullest potential. And again, being very lucky, like you said, being in the right place at the right time. So at my very last position, I was at Access Community Health Network. And one day I came into work early, just to prepare for some meetings. I honestly just wanted to clear my mind. I wanted to get out the house. And when I came into work early that day, there was a black female physician who was on site as well. And it was about 7 a.m. We started a random conversation. It came out of thin air, where she later on exposed to me that she was a part-time cannabis doctor. And I was just completely amazed. I've never, ever, ever heard of that, let alone from a female physician, a black female physician. It was brand new to me. So being at the right place at the right time and not being afraid to have a conversation with someone about cannabis really just opened my mind. She made me aware that, you can try different things. She knew that I was looking for additional income, so that's when she introduced me to the dispensary world. And honestly, it just took off from there. I decided in February of 2020 that I was more comfortable in the cannabis space. I was more comfortable working in the dispensary, and I decided, like, hey, I'm just gonna take a leap of faith. I'm gonna go full time here, and we'll see what happens. And oddly enough, in March of 2020, COVID happened, where my healthcare job was no longer deemed essential, and me being at a cannabis dispensary was pronounced essential need. So that was my way of convincing my parents that I was still in the healthcare industry.
Laura and Vanessa, what about your previous roles have really supported a strong backbone in cannabis? We know that things are, Laurie alluded to, CPG, I think a lot of people think of marketing as like, oh, we can just trade in and out. I was doing this over here, it's absolutely going to be so applicable over here. What in your previous role really supported a good background for what you're doing now? And maybe what are some nuances that I think maybe some individuals don't realize are hurdles coming into the marketing space from maybe a traditional background or, other walks of life?
Okay. My prior world was 17 years in being in a member service organization. And so it was primarily for healthcare providers or in another vertical of hospitality, and like golf courses, casinos, restaurants. And so our members were they were independent, cause, heart-driven, that didn't necessarily have the business acumen and services available to them that they wanted. And so they would join our membership. And we had 28 different sub-companies that provide services from finance to insurance, marketing, online education, government relations, and advocacy. So lots and lots of things. And I started there in our web design division, doing user experience, web design, and creative director. And so I from that tech perspective, I got to learn a lot about just the, being compliant in an overly regulated space of healthcare and HIPAA compliancy, like what does that mean so that you can still provide great education to the patients and caregivers. And then after that time, I was promoted to VP of Marketing for the entire entity, and I really got to learn more about the members and what it means to have a membership mindset versus being transactional. And so when you are trying to learn more about the people that you serve, thinking of them as members as a forever transaction is a whole different way of thinking. Because what you're trying to do is not only understand where they're coming from, but you're trying to anticipate where they're trying to go, and so that you can provide the best services for them. And so we did that by doing over 300 events a year, and our pillars were impactful experiences and personal relationships. And so through those core two pillars, every day I got to learn from our members and figure out what they were trying to do in their business as well as just personally, because they were very intertwined, because they were heart and cause driven. And so having that entire 17 years of learning that has influenced what I do in this industry, because it's very similar. I meet so many women and entrepreneurs that are in this because of a reason. They're heart and cause forward, and they just need some help along the way and connections to help get where they're going. The other part of that I feel like there's a lot of parallels is that just personally I've had a lot of loss. And so I lost my brother at the age of 25 to a heart attack after opioid addiction, depression, and drug abuse. And then 2 years later, lost my dad to brain cancer. And so him being like the hero in my life, we didn't have a lot of access or education to what was possible. This is 10 years ago. And so I'm in this now because I know that there are so many people that have been helped, and I want them to have a different outcome. And so the more that I can be out there to help women, just anybody in this space realize that they are doing so much good, like, then I've done what I've come here to do.
Yeah, I think for me personally, with my past experience, and I've had a few different experiences in different industries. My previous industry I was in was healthcare industry, and I was a software trainer for the credentialing software. So throughout my entire years of living, my experience really is connecting with people. That's really what I think the core of what marketing is being able to connect with people, really listen to, what their needs are, and finding out solutions and how we could provide different solutions for them. So I would say with customer service, client facing, I've had event planning experience as well. So event design, event planning, and so what we really do is we have a consultation, right? We really listen to what those needs are. And same thing with marketing, right? We listen to what the brand is, what their messaging is, who are they, what do they want their customers to feel when they make these purchases. So it's really about finding that connection for me, and I think that going into the cannabis industry, it's the same thing. It's learning how to connect with people. Like, I was born and raised in the city of Chicago. Shout out North Side. North Side. Grew up in the Edgewater, Rogers Park area, which is predominantly Latino and Black community. So throughout my upbringing, I grew up with a lot of different multicultural communities. So just being able to identify and connect with them, that really what it comes down to. And also education. Mm-hmm. Education is huge when it comes to cannabis market across the board, right? And it's not just educating on the plant, but also educating on your consumer of who you are and why you want to be in this industry. So really honing down to the messaging. And again, cannabis is the core, and this is what brings people together from all walks of life. So again, just honing in on that.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds a lot of what you're sharing is we're anticipating needs, we're educating, and we recognize that everybody can't do everything at once, so we really come in and support through marketing, making sure that our messages are getting across, that the consumer feels connected to what we're really bringing to share with them. I really love that. One of the things I think cannabis is difficult to market in. Laurie and Jeni, what are some roadblocks that you are facing, and how are you overcoming them, whether it's through how you educate, how you offer marketing? What is different that you're experiencing and how do you solve for that problem when you can't maybe put a cartoon on a package that seems like a simple way to educate, because we're all familiar with being educated through Sunday morning cartoons, and so how do you kind of navigate that?
So the difference in this industry versus other industries is there's so much you can do. So when I was in CPG, I could put stuff on TV, radio, I had every medium available to me. I could put whatever I wanted on the package as long as it was true and accurate and followed FDA guidelines. If I wanted to put a cartoon on something, no problem. The difference in this industry is that you have to be very compliance heavy. And compliance heavy is almost an understatement. So just because you know compliance in Illinois does not mean you know compliance in Michigan and California and Washington and Massachusetts. You almost have to know the laws of every single state and what you can do in those states. And so in normal CPG, you can produce in a state and you can ship it across the country. Cannabis, you can't do that. And not only can you not do that, you sometimes have to change your packaging for each state you operate in. You have to change your marketing for each state you operate in, and you have to change your messaging for that as well. And so this is a very local industry versus a national industry. And so when you think about creating national brands, when you think about, scaling across the country, the things you have to be aware of are very much those legal guidelines. And so when I was a marketer, for Ragu, I looked at my legal team as kind of that necessary evil. So, I only talked to them if I absolutely had to, and at the very last second. And I looked at them as that rubber stamp, like, please just rubber stamp this and let me do my thing. In cannabis, I have to be locked and loaded with my compliance and GC people all the time. Like, there's no option. So, some of the roadblocks we face, you can't do things the way you normally would do them. You can't scale them. Things aren't necessarily repeatable in every single market. And you have to be you almost have to, I always say, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. You have to play one on TV because as a marketer, you're almost a de facto attorney, even though you're not. And so being aware of all of those guidelines and making sure you adhere to them, making sure you do things the right way will save you a ton of money down the road, because one misstep, you could be fined, you could also be out of business. And so really focusing on that and making sure that the mediums you're using are ones you should be using. So, you take social media, and we all use social media. We're not actually legal on social media. So we are violating Instagram and Facebook's terms of service every single day that we post anything about cannabis. And so, we're doing things, we're trying to do things the right way, we're trying to do things, in a compliant way, but, always realize that, that's really what those guidelines are, and you have to be very careful with how you approach each of those mediums. And, I always say, err on the conservative side. In CPG, I would swing for the fences. In cannabis, I tend to not, because it's more important to get your brand out there, your message out there, and make sure it stays out there versus getting shut down and having to start everything all over again. And anybody who's in here who's owned a brand or a retail establishment in the cannabis industry has seen a Facebook or Instagram page get shut down, has seen, things be shuttered because they haven't been compliant. And so, I take a good page out of my good friend Leah Heiss's book when we say that compliance is really something you have to be cognizant about at all times.
Yeah, moment of silence for all those shut down Instagram posts.
Yes.
It's a bummer.
While we're at it, make sure you follow the new Dog Walker social media page. We were shut down, so get our likes and our follows back up. Thank you.
And I think compliance is a line we toe, right? Because I have found myself multiple times saying, like, you guys, it's still federally illegal. Mm-hmm. Like, we're actually sort of operating in this weird gray space to begin with, and so there are absolutely, I think, guidelines that we're all following actively and aware of, and risks that we're taking being in this industry. And you're absolutely right. Being aware of compliance is key.
We need to mitigate those risks as much as possible. It's just not worth it any other way.
Well, I'm going to come from a totally different angle because I do come from more of a gray area operation. But I think coming from the world of food and beverage and being a restaurant owner and knowing all the compliance issues in regards to how to prepare and serve food correctly, and therefore knowing all, all the different rules that have to take place and in order to do something, to make it infused correctly, to make sure that, we're not just serving something that has the same, whether it's the same strain or the same flavors, making sure that we're really taking that to the next level, and pairing those flavors correctly and infusing your foods correctly. So when it comes to marketing that in the right ways, Laurie talks about a lot of compliance issues, but how do you even get your brand to even get that far to where, I want to be dealing with compliance issues, right? Because I want to get my brand to the point where that can be a discussion that we're even having on the table. So for those of us that are coming from the very beginning and from the start, how do we step into the pond, and what risks do we take to be seen, and what risks do we not take that are gonna be jumping off the cliff? And I think, something that I'm sure you all have noticed is that Rebecca and I, coming from the corporate world, are very true to ourselves, and this is not a costume, this is not an act, this is not like I dye my hair because I have issues. I do have issues, but that's this is who I am, this is how I present myself, and that's why I'm in this industry, because I believe in cannabis, and I have always believed in cannabis, and it saved my life when I lived in New Orleans for 5 years, and I watched a lot of my friends become raging alcoholics, and I was sitting at home smoking pot all day. And so it's taught me a lot of things, and therefore coming from that corporate world and moving into this area, I have to choose what risks are we going to take and what risks are we not going to take. And when it comes to things like taking risks and dealing with some of these challenges and marketing issues, and how do we not get in trouble, is to put your best self forward, believe in what it is that you're producing, be smart, right? And be visible, be seen, be heard, show up, and keep pushing, right? We've both owned restaurants, we've both vended at the Taste of Chicago in restaurants next to each other, at the restaurant, same one together, at Lollapalooza, at Bonnaroo, at Coachella. We have traveled this country and served hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. But at the end of the day, we would rather come back here and serve a small group of people a product that is infused with something that we all know and love, and something that we all believe in, and that we know is the next thing that we've been trying to tell people our whole lives. So, it's our turn to step up and share this plant with those who have been canna curious. I think COVID for us, I know, was a good lesson to meet a lot of friends who I think had been anti-cannabis pre their kids being home 24 hours a day. And all of a sudden we're interested in some gummies and wanted to sleep at night. So, learn from others, ask questions, and put yourself out there.
And mitigate risk. I think we're still talking on the same line. It's about mitigating the risk of putting yourself out there. We are federally illegal, and there's still other states where things are nuanced, and there's guidelines available for all of us to read. But we're not all adjunct, lawyers, and we're working on it, and we're learning all the time. So,
and Gina, I'd like to add one more thing. So, Jeni, I love what you're saying there. And I think what's so amazing about Jeni, and why I always love being around her, is that, in this space, you really have to live your brand. We're all small companies. We're all, no matter whether you're an MSO or you're not, it's still a small company, believe it or not. And the fact that Jeni is out there and Rebecca's out there, they're living their brand, they're being that brand every single day. I think, yes, compliance is incredibly important, but what you're doing, what we're seeing, what you're being your authentic self and being your brand, there's nothing that's going to shut that down. So, praise to you.
And so I think one of the things that we all try to emulate in marketing is really living your brand, being your brand, and we have to come up with fresh ideas all the time to kind of further that. Laura, Vanessa, Shanice, how do you kind of rally some of those inspirations and navigate those nuances of Instagram and restarting all over and getting your event out there in all these gray and black and white spaces?
I guess I will start from I'm going to take you on a journey. But so through customer experience design, it's a foundational roadmap called customer journey mapping. So in a customer journey, you have your awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, loyalty. And so you're trying to get people to be those forever champions and loyal to your brand, which is you. And so I encourage a lot of people to start with building an experience vision. And so that experience vision, it's what's the change in the world that you're trying to make for the people that you serve in 3 to 5 years. And then what you're doing is you're focusing on them and not you as a product or a brand. And there's multiple ways of benefits of doing that, but how to build up your experience vision is, it's a statement of, like myself. I want to provide guidance and education on customer experience design to help, so that I can help women in cannabis be able to know their customers, be able to provide delight, and to serve them. And so so it's I provide this to this persona, this group, to provide an outcome. And so those outcomes are trackable and measurable. They're not goals, they're like a stake in the sand that you're all marching towards. And so those outcomes are feelings that you're trying to evoke and change in somebody so that their life is better. And so when you have that, it helps everything. So it helps your internal just culture. As you start building up your team, you want them all marching towards that same stake in the sand. And as you give them autonomy, you allow them to not only take care of the customers, but the business, because they know where you're going. And then having those outcomes, like the be able to provide just be able to be heard or feel delight, those are things that will help you in your marketing. And so if you know who you're serving and you know how you're trying to improve their life, that will help you with what channels you should be on. It should help you on knowing the needs and the challenges of those that you serve. It helps you to show up with your messaging, and it helps you with just what those tactics are, so that you're doing less but better and not trying to be everything to everyone. And so that kind of helps with avoiding shiny objects, because if a new thing comes up, it's really easy to say, does that focus on our outcomes for the people that we serve? Mm-hmm. No? Okay, then let's put that in the back burner for later to something to reconsider. And then it also helps you just stay focused on what you're trying to do, and so that you feel good about it along the way. And so those things are always just really good to keep in mind.
I love that. It's like prioritizing for your business needs, which, help make sure that we're all marching in the same, towards your stake. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that as well. I think from my perspective, it's more of, again, we all preach the message of staying authentic, but that's true. You have to stay authentic. You have to stay all true to your mission or just the overall feel for your brand, because even being with a major MSA or a major cannabis organization, you have to understand, like, when you have small setbacks, like, again, dogs walkers, social media being taken down by Instagram, you can't rely on the heavy name of Green Thumb. You have to make sure that your consumers feel more connected to you. They want to make sure that they're not just being told to go buy pre-rolls. They want to feel as included in the brand as I am. So again, with me being a brand manager, they want to feel like, hey, I'm walking around with the brand every day. I'm being seen and heard. So it's like when you have that connection, when you have that like generalized feeling for your community and everybody that you're trying to reach out to, it makes them want to stay connected to you. So it's like something simple where they may have been searching for you on Instagram and they see that you go down and they're like, okay, well, where is my favorite brand at? Because they feel that connected to you. So if you're not authentic and you're not reaching out to people who matter and showing that they matter to you in the different ways, then it's like no matter how big of a name that you have, it's easier for you to just float off into the abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love what everyone said here and just being authentic and true to yourself. And we're also kind of in the same where Jeni is, we're also in a gray area. When we first started our company, we weren't able to tell anybody what we were doing yet. So what we did, we found a creative way to go out into the mainstream and start talking about cannabis, because when we started, we were just a medicinal state back in 2018, which is why we created a jewelry collection. It's a Cannabis in Chicago jewelry line. See that? Hey, I got some, 2, I got 3, let me know. So when we first started, just being out in the mainstream is really, again, going back to finding that connection, in-person connection, right? So finding creative ways to get your message across. And our way of doing that was going into these street festivals. So we are part of like Pilsen Fest, we're part of My House Music Festival. We were the only cannabis company to be vending out in these festivals, just so that we can start talking about cannabis and education. Really, when we wear this jewelry as emblems of who we are truly as an individual. Me and my business partner, shout out to my girl Kay, she's in the audience. Me and my business partner, the very first thing that connected us was cannabis, right? We each of us have our own relationship with cannabis. So when we use this jewelry line, we got all the negatives, but we also got the great positives, right? But this is what needs to happen, right? These conversations. So we use that to start talking to people, inviting them to our personal private events. And we decided to go big and did a whole launch, used marketing, in-person marketing. We gave out personal cards. We got 400 people in the door. They had no idea who was behind Hush. In fact, people thought that we were this huge California company coming to the Chicago market trying to take over. And we're just like, no, it's 2 women from Chicago. But reason why we started this was because we saw the gap that was missing in this industry. And that's something that I encourage people who are trying to get into this industry, is really look at what is missing and how you can be that solution. So when we first started, we would go to all these underground events, networking events, mainstream events, and we saw there was a huge gap, which is why we created Hush, is so that there was a lack of diversity when it came to the mainstream industry. So people understood that, people wanted that. And so even though our Instagram accounts also got shut down, 2 of them, 5,000 followers each, they both got shut down, but that doesn't stop there, right? It continues. And there's some brands who really focus on only social media, but you have to go outside of that. Because you can get shut down at any time, and then what? What do you have, right? So if you have your messaging across the board and people understand who you are and how you embody who you are as a person, you embody that as your brand too. So I guess be creative and look outside of social media.
You want marketers to be creative? What?
I know.
Wild. So I think we kind of touched on, there's plenty of problems in the cannabis space. Our opportunity is to look at those solutions and fulfill them. When you, are thinking about how to diversify how you market, Laurie and Laura, what are some things that you kind of prioritize in that diversity? And anybody who wants to chime in can. We'll have one more question after this one, but.
So you mean diversifying?
Yeah, when you're diversifying the way that you approach a market. So not just relying on social media. When you're going out in public and representing yourself well, inviting people to your brand, what are ways that you really kind of make sure that you're touching on enough points that if for some reason something got shut down, your name carries on?
Well, I think it's just that way. You can't just focus on one facet. So like what Vanessa just said, if your Instagram gets shut down, I don't care if you have 100,000 followers on Instagram. I hear brands say that all the time. And then the second it gets shut down, those 100,000 people are gone. And there's no way to get that back. There's no download you can take from Instagram to re-engage all of those people. And so you have to look at it from a multifaceted approach. So when I work with a company who wants to start a brand, I always say, let's go back to brand strategy. Let's look at target consumer. Let's look at positioning, the brand pyramid. Let's make sure we have all of that locked and loaded. Make sure we know exactly what our guidelines and guardrails are. And we stick with those guidelines and guardrails. Like Laura made a really great point about, if something comes over, does that make sense? Okay, it doesn't fit within the sort of the strategy. You talked about it from a customer roadmap perspective. I talk about it from a brand strategy perspective. That's your guidelines and guardrails. And you make sure you have all of that really buttoned up. And then it's how do you bring it to life? And so social is one way of doing it. But you have digital. You can do programmatic digital. You can do all kinds of branded content. You can do activation. So how are you going to activate at retail? How are you going to activate from an outreach perspective, from an education perspective? How are you going to ensure that, at retail, when you're a brand, it's different than being in a grocery store or in any kind of store where people can shop. Your bud tender, your patient care consultant, whatever you want to call them, that is the gatekeeper. How do you approach that person? How do you make sure that they know your brand? Because they are the ones who are going to be promoting your brand to consumers. And then taking a look at it from a public relations perspective. So as you're thinking about new markets, so whether you're an Illinois brand and you're looking to go to Michigan or you're looking to go to California, how do you make sure those markets are ready for you? And I say PR is a great way to do it. Again, in traditional industries, they do PR, but it's a little bit more on the side, and sometimes even that's not even always in marketing. Sometimes I've seen it in HR. But PR is one of those vehicles you can always use, and you work with the right people who know how to do it the right way, and it will always get your message out there. And so I always say, take a look at the brand, take a look at your pillars: digital, social, activation, and public relations and communications. And how are you going to activate against all of them together in a coordinated way? So that way, if one goes down, you have all of the other avenues available to you.
Laura, anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Okay. So again, with customer journey mapping, there's awareness and consideration before purchase. And so in the awareness is traditionally your social media, because you have to be in multiple touch points for people to see that you are real. But they're also seeking credibility. So they're like, yes, I'm aware of you, but I've got to vet you against all my internal things. And then they decide to purchase. So in that consideration is you're trying to build credibility, and you can do that through thought leadership, education. Like, we all know the importance of education, and I love hearing it so much in this industry. But what does that mean? It's just meeting people where they're at. So whether you have kind of curious, you have those that are a little bit more experienced, their 101 basis of what that is could be different. And so I'm the marketing chair for the Cannabis Travel Association International. And so there's multiple levels of 101 there. There's those in hospitality that are curious about cannabis and how that can plus their existing industry. So there's a 101 there. And then there's those that are in cannabis hospitality already, but they're not necessarily sure about the intricacies of a hotel or what to do with catering. And so there's so many different facets of being able to build up that education through doing webinars. I mean, people through COVID, everybody has a podcast. I mean, everybody's looking for great content. So it's building up your sphere of influence and your community through virtual networking. And when you can start having more people be your brand advocates and tell your brand story, once you have a brand story to tell them, you have to give them something to speak on your behalf. But then it starts radiating out. So I think those couple of key things are important.
I do have a podcast, so you can look that up.
Don't we all?
We all do, apparently. Well, we just have a few more minutes. I would love to know what parting words you have to share with everyone here. We'll start with Shanice, but what marketing advice do you want to share with anybody who's looking to start their own brand, get their word out there, be authentic, show up, educate the right people, go after the right market?
Honestly, just find a lane that works for you and stay with it, whether that be marketing, whether that be any type of way of you trying to enter the cannabis industry. I think we're always trying to find something that's cannabis related in order to be in this industry. And it's like, that's not necessarily true. We need accountants, we need IT, we need podcasters, we need book writers, we need researchers. We literally need every single thing that's already been touched upon. So it's like, honestly, you just going back home and sitting with yourself and just being like, okay, what am I good at? And then finding a way to make it make sense in this new evolving industry. But then also, I think that's the best thing about this, is because this is the first time that any of us in any generation has been able to be a part of an industry from the ground up like this.
Yes.
So it's like, even if you see something that you want to do that's not being done, do it. Because it's not being done. So it's like, you have all of the space and opportunity as long as you're confident in yourself, as long as you have a good team around you. And that team can be someone as a company that you work for. That team can be your friends that show up at your panels. That team can just be your mom or your dad rooting you on from the sidelines. But it's just, as long as you find what works for you, it doesn't necessarily have to be marketing, but there is a way for you to be here and to make yourself be seen and heard.
I love that. And if you don't have a team, you can be your own team, and you can support yourself and find somebody in this room that can be a part of your team, because some of us got in here way early on and it was awful hard to find a team. So, Vanessa.
I love that. I love what you said. I think mine is not necessarily specifically for marketing, because again, like you said, we're in a really infancy stage in cannabis. Dream big, right? Again, look for those gaps. Hone in on the skill sets that you already have, because they're interchangeable skills, right? It's just a brand new industry that you can still educate yourself. But I think to really go down to the core of why. Why do you want to get into this industry? Do you have a personal connection with it? I think if you find your personal why, and then ask yourself 7 more times. 7 more times, why do you want to get into this industry? But not just individually, but also as your business. For those who are looking to start a business, like, why do you want to start a business in cannabis? There's a really great book that I recommend called Know Your Why by Simon Simsek. I recommend that book, and I think it's a mindset, really. So figuring that out, that is what's going to drive you to figure out what the niche is that you want in this market.
Similar, I practice less but better, and so that is from Essentialism, a book by Greg McGowan. Changed my life, because in marketing, branding, you feel like you can do anything, so what do you choose to do without feeling horrible that I'm not doing well at all of it all the time? So less but better has given me permission to be able to do really well with fewer things to make more of an impact. And so I coach around that all the time, just because it's giving yourself permission just to hone in on what you're really good at and excel, and forge a path that way.
I love that. You mean we can't be good at everything? No, you absolutely cannot, as a matter of fact.
You can't, Gina.
No, it's
Not when you have to deal with different regulations in different states.
no,
How can you be
absolutely
that
not. You
person?
literally cannot do everything in marketing. It's wild, which is why you need allies.
Just to continue to expand on the idea that this industry is in its infancy, one thing that's just so important to me, and I know it's so important to all of us on stage, is that this is our opportunity to show up and to make sure that the representation at the top represents the people that got us here and that have brought this industry to where we've gotten so far, and the legacy industry needs to be represented correctly, and executives need to look like everyone else and look like the rest of us. And I think one thing that I think about that every day, because I feel as though every job I ever had was me walking in and having a group of old white men, and forgive me for saying that, but say, if you'd only been here a few years ago, that's when we were really making the money. Just every time I showed up, it was just always like a day late and $1 short, and they're like, too bad for you, and this is our moment, and this is our chance to step up and to really and to do it right, because we have the opportunity to do that.
So in pretty much every industry, people say, it's not personal, it's business. Except this industry. This is the most personal industry you can possibly be in. We are helping people live better lives. We are helping people manage their own health care. This is a personal business. And as a personal business, we need to learn to lead from the heart, not the mind. And so it's about what you feel. It's about what you want to emote. You know, I had someone tell me, you attract what you are. So let's be the love and the light, and let's be an industry of abundance. And as long as we focus on that, and we focus on doing the right things, the business will come. And so my advice to everybody here, you're starting a brand, you're starting an operation, lead from the heart.
Love that.
One last thing.
And I think we're all realizing more and more through like a pandemic or something that like actually life is pretty personal, and like business being business kind of doesn't serve anybody. So I really appreciate everybody being so thoughtful today. Thank you everyone for joining us for the conference. This has been really nourishing, I think, for a lot of us, and we're grateful to have everybody here joining us. Y'all are free to leave. Anybody who is interested in joining our mentorship program, being a mentor, a mentee, you can pick up one of these and join us. We're open to your membership, and we hope you found value. Big shout out to Amor in the back who put this on. We couldn't have done it without her, and all of you showing up, and Cindy Costor, Sylvia, whose name I can never remember the last name. Say it out loud. What? Rohel. Sylvia Rohel, and everybody's really dedicated hard work. Thank you all very much for being here, and happy St. Patrick's Day weekend. Go look at the Green River.
Oh, can I invite people? Wait. Oh man, they cut off my mic.